Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. Robert along with Sports Radio 610 Shaun Bijani, and joining us to talk Astros is our contributor and co-host emeritus, Stephen Kerr, bringing us nearly 4 decades covering sports around Houston and Texas. Great to see you, Stephen.
Hey, it's great to see you, Robert. I've been praying for you, buddy. Glad you're back.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And while I'm back, it's not looking good for Lance McCullers. He got an MRI, or is getting an MRI on Friday after suffering a setback, looking more and more like he could be done for the season. I don't know if that's really a surprise to any of us. But the good news is JP France, and that's what I wanted to start with you guys. He's got 6 starts already, 1.15 whip, 3.44 ERA, 231 batting average against. Stephen, do you think he looks for real to you?
Well, he certainly does. I mean, I think it's still a small sample size, but I think you've had enough starts where you can at least see where he was. And unfortunately, a couple of those starts, the bullpen blew it, or he might have had a couple more wins that he has right now. You can't blame him for that. And in some cases, the offense hasn't come through. But yeah, I'd say all in all, he is certainly looking, a little better than I expected him to. I didn't expect him, of course, to come in and dominate, like Hunter Brown kind of domination. But you really can't complain too much about the way he's pitched lately.
He had, 2, starts that were the one where he really got rocked probably about 3 or 4 outings ago. But the guy gives you every chance to win. I mean, you're looking to, at this day and age, you're looking for a guy to get you through 5. And if he gets you into 6, it's almost like a luxury, especially if it's a JP France or a Brandon Bielak type. And he's giving you every opportunity to win these ball games that he's been in, for the most part.
Steven, what's your biggest concern about the Astros in the regular season? It could be different for a postseason situation, but just the regular season, what's your biggest concern?
Well, other than the obvious, the offense is just so inconsistent. The bullpen is kind of going through some struggles. I mean, you're hoping that they'll do what they did, toward the end of the season last year and into the postseason. I mean, as we know, they were lights out, but they definitely have some rough spots in there. When you're talking about, I know, Robert, I know you've talked about this on the podcast before. Rafael Montero has certainly had his struggles. And, Hector Neris has been pitching pretty well until Wednesday night, and he gave up, the winning run. But, something interesting about Montero, speaking of him, Robert, I was looking at some StatCast numbers today, and maybe the Astros should just pitch him at home and not pitch him on the road, because his numbers are better at home than they are on the road. He has only 1 win. It came at home. His 3 losses were on the road. His home ERA is something like 2.40. His road ERA is 12.20. And his whip at home is much lower than his whip on the road. So, I don't know. He's certainly one of the biggest reasons that the bullpen has struggled. But I have to say, I think at some point they will get it together. But it's still, a bit of a concern, because they've blown a few games the Astros could have won for sure.
I haven't used this one yet, but it seems like a popular phrase now. What does the back of the baseball card say, though, historically for Montero? Because, sometimes, small sample sizes like the home road split, can be excused away by even fundamental factors.
Right.
Just depending on, how stressed the bullpen had been because of the starters not being able to go deep. Maybe it's happened more so where it's put them in situations on the road on short rest. I'd like to see that stuff. And, coming off of a career year last year, I'd like to see what he did, on the home road splits last year. I know it's easy enough to look up. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but those things are kind of curious to me. It looked to me, guys like Montero, it really kind of started to put things together in terms of consistency. I know he had, a really poor 2-week stretch last month, early to mid-May. But I mean, since getting blown to bits, for back-to-back outings, giving up a combined 8 runs. I mean, he's had 1 bad outing since then, really, maybe 2, where he's really kind of struggled command-wise as well, outside of just giving up a couple runs and some hits. But I thought like he's been doing a better job. And as the starting pitching continues to, I think, improve as well, getting the contributions you're getting out of Bielak and JP France, it takes a little bit of heat off of guys like Montero and really the bullpen in general.
Yeah, it seems like with Montero, you could fade his struggles as opposed to Jose Abreu, who we got to see out
Yeah.
there every single game. And, it just seems like we're in an inevitable situation with Abreu that, I mean, I don't know what the deal is about rolling him out every game. Like he's got to be in the lineup. And I said this earlier in the season, but we're now, way into the season at this point. This is, 60, 70 we're coming close to the halfway point of the entire season. And Abreu is still being treated like there's nothing going on. And this goes back to last year, his struggles. And we're talking about a lineup that's got guys at the back end that are performing and that deserve to be moved up in the lineup, whether it's Chaz or Jake Myers or Corey Julks or whoever, they're all much better. And, I keep going back to this idea that you get the longest leash ever with Dusty. And again, there is no rule in baseball that says once you move a guy to the 8th spot one day, you can't move him back to the 4th spot the next day. If he's hitting, 3 home runs the next day, well, great. He got 3 home runs out of the 8th spot. You can move back up to the 4th spot if he's starting to roll again. I mean, this isn't a rule. And for an offense that's inconsistent and struggling, to have Jose Abreu sitting right there in the 5 or 6 spot in the lineup just seems like it's craziness, Stephen. I mean, I just don't get it.
Yeah, he has been batting in the 6th hole, at least for the last several days. And I think he did get a game off the other day. But, the biggest issue, Robert, is you're paying him an awful lot of money. And, you're not going to sit somebody on the bench for a long period of time if you're paying him that kind of money, even if it is warranted. And, I mean, yeah, his struggles last year with the White Sox and then, going into this year, I mean, at first you might say, well, the first year that a player signs a big contract, typically, I mean, I don't have numbers in front of me and there'd be a whole bunch of players that you'd have to go look at. But, in a lot of instances, I see players struggle in their first year with a big contract. And then they come back the second year, maybe some of the pressure's off and they kind of realize that they don't have to do it all. But, in Abreu's case, I don't know if it's that or if he's really just declined that much. I mean, it just, what a drop off he's had. I know it's been a steady decline, a slow decline the last few years, but man, this is crazy. I mean, he hit the 1 home run recently and you thought, okay, maybe he's getting his stroke back, but I don't know, he's something like 5 for 32 since the home run. So apparently not. So yeah, it is a mystery, but you just have to hope that the guy is either going to get it together the way Yuli Gurriel did toward the end of last season and then get into the postseason and then maybe come back the next year, just, completely reset, have an off season. And because the thing is, Jose Abreu doesn't have to do it all. It's not on his shoulders. You've got plenty of other guys that you can go to where you're not the go-to guy. And he certainly hasn't been this year for sure.
Sean, if you hit a home run against the A's, does it count? And against the A's bullpen, does it count like as a AA home run?
Well, for Abreu, it does.
Hey, I saw your tweet the other day. I'll just point to this. One of the most historically poor franchises in sports history were the St. Louis Browns for so many years, and while they had so many great players actually come through and play for them, there was a lot of really great players that compiled some fantastic all-time stats against them that are in the record books that we hold so dearly to our chest. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the A's, if it's the Jays, it doesn't matter. The Royals, whatever you do against the big league ball club, it counts. But I just wanted to make a point on Abreu, if I could. At this point, we're throwing everything up against the wall to see if it sticks with this guy because we just don't know. And the only thing I would say substantial that we've heard from anybody, whether it be Abreu himself, but just any member of this Houston Astros ball club, has come from Alex Cintron. And it wasn't a aha moment. It wasn't like the light bulb had gone off. Even he at the time during the interview about a month ago now threw it up against the wall, it seemed like, when he was talking about maybe it's a mechanical thing. We don't know. If there was ever a time for a guy, a free agent particularly, and one of the most productive on the market this past offseason in Jose Abreu. If there was ever an opportunity for a guy to come to a ball club that, oh, by the way, has gone to 6 straight ALCSs and has won 2 World Series now over the course of the last 6 years, it's Jose Abreu. He was coming into a really great ball club already. So Stephen's point, it's a fantastic one, but when you're used to being the dude, when you're used to, producing at the level and you want to do everything you can to fit in, sometimes it's natural. You're going to bring that extra added pressure to a situation. But I'll tell you this, for a guy that the organization is paying nearly $20 million a year to in Abreu, if he makes it through this season, continuing to struggle like this, what kind of pressure do you think he's going to feel next spring training, when he's coming off of a career worst year in terms of production, everything across the board? What kind of pressure do you think he's going to feel then? It's going to be twofold from what he must be feeling now. So maybe it's mechanical. Maybe it's the added pressure. Maybe it's a new city, new situation, new staff, new way of looking at things and data and all this stuff. And he's overwhelmed and he just can't be himself anymore. I don't know what it is. And every answer that he's given makes you feel like it's something personal going on within his everyday life, as a human. So this feels like one of those things that we're not going to know very much about until it's the off season, if that. But I'll tell you this, you're getting very close to the point to where if you're the Astros, you really have to take a hard look at this thing. One game here and there ain't going to do it to get this guy right. You might have to sit him a series or two and call it a wash, even though you're paying this guy $19.5 million this year. Look at the production you're getting out of Corey Julks and Chas McCormick and Jake Myers and all of these different lineups that Baker has used this year. You talk about the inconsistency with the offense. There's an inconsistent lineup, which, those two are not estranged from each other. There's a commonality there. But hey, if you're getting production out of Diaz or Julks or McCormick or Myers or any combination of those 3, 4, 5 guys, you got to eat it, regardless of how much the guy's getting paid. It's about production. And I still believe over the course of the next month, the Astros, are going to be atop the Rangers, because you do have a big series coming up here in a couple of weeks or so. I think maybe week and a half with the Rangers. But you don't want to let this thing get out of control. I mean, this division should be theirs, and I think it's still, even at this point, they believe it will be.
Shaun, it's not pressure. He's 36 years old. He's been around for a decade. He's seen all the he's been in playoffs. There's not pressure.
Yeah, I get it.
Have you?
No, but I think it is.
You're watching him, right? Aren't you?
I think it's psychological, though.
I know. I'm watching a guy that they're throwing fastballs to that you should be able to hit. They're on fastball after fastball on the inner part of the plate. He can't catch up to it. He just doesn't have the hand-eye coordination. He can't do it anymore. It's to me, you just watch him. He's just not. He can't do it. This is like, we know from watching baseball for 100 years. When you're 36 years old, when you're in your late 30s, there's a drop off. This isn't. We look at things like Tom Brady or LeBron James is normal, or Justin Verlander. Those guys are not normal. They're not.
Yeah, but this isn't normal either. I mean, this is like Enron, dude. It's not even Yuli-esque, going from winning a batting title in 21 to hitting 247 in 2022. I mean, he still had valuable parts of his game and was able to turn it on in the postseason. Like, when's this guy going to be able to turn it on? I get that over the course of the last 2-3 years, there's been a steady decline in some advanced numbers, but this is like Enron level-esque type stuff where he is just fallen off of a cliff, and we're all wondering why, and that's why I say you have to leave open the possibility. If we're going to throw this, that, and the other thing up against the wall, then why can't it be, a combination of all of these things, maybe with a little pressure? Because maybe he didn't come in with pressure, Robert, and he'd already entered this season having gone 40 games, I think, without hitting a home run. That was one of the longest stretches that he's ever had in his career. And now, before he hit the first one this year, it was up to 101 games or something like that. Something that he'd never experienced before. And it's important because when you're not able to put the ball into play regularly, like he's been used to doing since he's been a big leaguer, then the number one thing that keeps you on the field when you're not a stellar Gold Glove-esque type first baseman or position player is you better be able to produce runs. How's he been able to produce runs throughout his career? He's been a gap hitter and he's been a power hitter. He's hit home runs. He's driven in 100 runs almost every dang year that he's been in the league. He's not even approaching anything close to that. No semblance of the previous game. So I think something else is going on. Is he hurt? Does he have something degenerative? If he does, like, this is the first. He's never had experienced anything like that before. He's been one of the more durable players at his position over the course of the last 5, 6, 7 years, really, in his career. So it's perplexing at this point in time. And I get it if you're Dusty. You're just teetering right there. You're so close. I mean, you're not playing bad baseball by any stretch. You're just trying to afford the veteran to every single opportunity to figure this out. And again, I say you get to a certain point if you're the Astros and that lead grows by the Rangers to 4.5, 5.5, 6.5 games, you got to figure something out and do something to get more consistent offensively. And making a change at first base and at the plate with Abreu not being a part of it has got to be seriously considered.
Yeah, everybody just seems to go, well, Dusty's won a zillion games and he's a genius. And we love Dusty because he won a World Series. Just because a guy wins a World Series, and just because a guy's won 2,000 games, you can still have a flaw. You can still not be perfect. And, saying, well, if you say on social media, well, why is it Dusty dropping Abreu down the lineup? Why doesn't Yainer Diaz, who has a better ERA when he's behind the plate than Martin Maldonado, the brilliant leader of this the team would fall apart, according to Dusty, if Maldy's not behind home plate. You could still be incorrect if you're Dusty Baker. Like, Stephen, what do you do if you're Dusty? What would you do with Yainer Diaz and Martin Maldonado with this fight?
Well, I'm glad you asked because it's funny. I was just about to get to Yainer Diaz. I wanted to talk about him for a moment because not only has he shown some great sense behind the plate, but his hitting is starting to pick up. And I don't think it's any coincidence that it's because he is playing a little bit more as of late. He's hitting better, cutting down on swinging outside the strike zone, I think has helped him a lot because, man, during May, he was swinging at pitches outside the zone way above what the league average is. He was like 47.6%, and the league average is like 28.4. But he has definitely been hitting better, playing better defensively. And Robert, you talked about what Dusty's philosophy is. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that Dusty and Dana Brown are having tense moments necessarily the way that Dusty and James Click were having, but let me just tell you, Dana Brown has made some comments about Yainer Diaz lately that lead me to wonder. And one of those comments is he would like to see Yainer playing more. And Dana Brown, of course, is quick to add, well, it's Dusty's call, but ... So it kind of makes you wonder, how close is Dana Brown's philosophy to Dusty's, especially when it comes, to guys like Yainer Diaz, Ronel Blanco. They finally put him in the starting job, just like Dana Brown wanted. Guess what? Ronel Blanco has pitched 6 innings in both of his starts. So that is something to think about. Just keep under your hat a little bit, let it sit for a while down the road, and let's see what happens.
I'm looking at a very simple split here, and it's a small sample size, but in short, I will just say this. Look, Yainer needs more at-bats. He needs more playing time. I think we'd all agree there. And maybe he doesn't necessarily need to find it behind the dish, which you make a great point. Stats don't lie, Robert. I mean, we'd all prefer it to be much more behind the dish. But for a dude that ain't hitting squat against lefties, against righties, it doesn't matter, is Jose Abreu. If you can get Yainer Diaz at bats at first base while Maldonado's catching, that's another one of those options that I think has to be explored and considered. But
it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity because they had Sanchez up for 2 months, and Abreu is struggling and struggling and struggling. And you could have put Yainer Diaz out there more at first base than they did. And I think Dana Brown, to Stephen's point, Dana Brown, I think you heard in that frustration is, why wasn't Yainer batting occasionally more for Jose Abreu? And to Stephen's point also, why wasn't Yainer Diaz pitch hitting more late in games in the 7th or 8th inning when you have another catcher in, right sitting there is Salazar. I forgot, I might have screwed his name over.
Yeah,
but
Cesar Salazar is who you're doing. And they sent him down
Yeah.
recently, though, too.
Yeah. And I think Data probably just got pissed. I think the reason why he got sent down is Data Brown, he got pissed off because I gave you a third catcher so we could see more Yainer Diaz. And I just left him up there and you did nothing with him. He got 10 at bat. It was a wasted roster spot.
Yeah. Look, against right-handers, as a starter or just, even coming off the bench, Yainer Diaz is hitting, 305 this season, particularly as a starter. He's hitting 321, and that's where he's gotten all 3 of his home runs as an Astro this season, is as a starter against right-handed hitting. He hasn't hit left-handed pitching very well this season. Again, a very small sample size, but looking at Martin Maldonado against left-handed pitching, Martin Maldonado, when's the last time this dude's hit 300 against anything or anybody at any point in time? It's against left-handed pitching this season. Again, fairly small sample size, but situationally, maybe this is something at the very least to get this dude at bats. You need to consider in infusing Yainer Diaz situationally more in games instead of trusting that old cagey veteran at the plate in Martin Maldonado, which, look, he gave us some memories over the course of the last couple of years in the regular season and some of the postseason and some big-time moments. But at the end of the day, man, it's about, chasing the Texas Rangers right now, which finally I feel like for the first time all damn season this week, they're starting to get a little bit of respect for doing what they've done as a ball club. The Astros don't want to be looking up at this ball club all season long. You've got to do what you've got to do because you've been inconsistent offensively because the lineup has been inconsistent all season long. And it's not all Dusty's fault. I mean, you have to give the guy a ton of credit for what he's done. His 3rd year as Astros manager, he has to get some credit. But Michael Brantley, Jose Altuve, whatever's going on with Yordan Alvarez, leaving the ball game tonight, like McCullers, like you're missing guys all over the place, man, and you're still a darn good ball club. Well, optimize. Be the best ball club you could possibly be, and you're not doing it with guys like Jose Abreu getting the at-bats that he is, Yainer not getting the bats that he deserves.
Yeah, Shaw just mentioned it. We're recording on Thursday night. Yordan leaves the game with a right oblique strain. And Stephen, it's scary because the reason why we're talking about Abreu and the Yainer Diaz situation hitting is because it seems like if Yordan isn't doing anything with his team, then this offense is very, very inconsistent. And it just seems like you need a longer lineup. You need to tweak things a little bit more than you had to do in previous years because of the Altuve being in and out with his injuries, Bregman with his incredibly slow start as usual, and just other factors. So, I mean, Shaw, this is why this is why it's so important that you do get some help because Yordan goes down with an oblique strain and if we're going to miss it for 3 days, how do we score runs?
Yeah, that is absolutely right. And it seems like, one guy goes back in and then another guy goes out. And I'm talking about your main hitters, Alvarez is out now. Altuve had come back in after being out for so long. He was lighting it up and then he goes back out again. So, the lineup hasn't even been that consistent. You're talking about some of your main guys have spent either a lot or a little time on the IL or just been sitting out with injuries. So it is a concern. The one thing I would say to look to is the trade deadline's coming up. And yeah, the Astros may need another starting pitcher, but something tells me they're going to try to go get a bat when the trade deadline gets here, especially if things don't start to turn around in the next few weeks. I think even Dana Brown has even hinted at something like that in some of his comments recently, is that the Astros definitely need more help off the bench or even just another bat in the lineup.
Yeah, look, he said, numerous times since he'd been hired that he's going to be aggressive, right? And that's
Yep.
fine. You can talk about it, but at the end of the day, he might actually be in a position to where he's got to be aggressive. And I think they should be in the market for a bat. I think they should be in the market for more pitching, but it's going to be really a good follow, I think, for all of us to see exactly, between now and the trade deadline, which is like what, August 1st or whatever, like 2 or 3 p.m., I
Right.
think, right?
Right.
So you got a little bit, but it's going to largely be dictated by what this ball club does now through this upcoming stretch. You're 4.5 games behind the Texas Rangers. I mean, you lost the last couple, and the Rangers, they won some close games. Heck, even lost 1-0 yesterday after getting a stellar pitching performance. And so, when Jordan's out of the lineup, who knows how long he's going to be back? Maybe he's back, in a couple of days. Dusty says this all the time. I don't like, if a guy says he's ready, if the training staff says he's ready, I like to give him an extra day or two just to make sure. So you're looking at already, by that logic, Jordan being out over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 days. Just that. A lot can happen in 2, 3, 4 days. Astros can start on the slide. You might be looking 7.5, 8 games up at the Rangers by at that point. So Dana Brown's going to have some really tough decisions to make. Guys, I've just been trying to rack my brain. How the heck do you get out from underneath of this dang Jose Abreu contract? Because I was talking him up like no other this offseason. I was excited about it legitimately, but it's getting to a point now where, I'm going to have his back until I don't. And when I don't, it's going to be because he's not a member of this ball club anymore. I just don't see that as a possibility. But I do still think if you explore a bat possibility, that maybe it is a first baseman and maybe it's a decision you make. You know what? You're going to pay this dude his money to figure it out on the bench and be a situational guy for you. I don't know.
But Sean, if it is a first baseman, I mean, my concern is, remember last year, Yuli was really struggling the entire year. They bring over
Yeah.
Trey Mancini in a trade,
But he
and
was
then
good at first base.
Dusty wouldn't even play. He would barely play him. If Dana Brown brings in a really good first baseman, does Dusty play him? That's where I don't know. Maybe Dana Brown has a little bit more pull than James Click. Maybe James Click couldn't say anything to Dusty. Maybe Dana is like, look, man, you're not getting another GM fired at the end of the year, so you're gonna have to work with me. And if I bring in a first baseman, you're gonna have to play him, whether you like it or not, because this guy looks like he's washed.
Yeah. Stephen, how do you see this thing playing out, man? Can you survive long term? And by that, I just mean this season, hoping that Abreu snaps out of it? Or is that a position where you need to really look at adding a bat?
Well, I certainly think if you're going to add a bat, it needs to be somebody who can play first base, even if on a backup basis. Yeah, I know you've got guys like Yainer Diaz who could probably spot, but I think you need to get a bat in there because, look, the Astros don't have really anybody in their farm system that you can say, oh, there's your future first baseman. We can just bring him up, groom him along, and if Abreu continues to struggle, put him in there. Yeah, I think you do need to get a bat that at least has experience at first base. So if you decide to make a change, whether it's this year, next year, who knows what the free agency market holds by then. Yeah, I think you need to certainly start the conversation and think about it now, especially if Abreu doesn't turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're all about spending money and, I mean, Jim Crane's not going to be accused of spending money irresponsibly, right? I mean, if that was the case, he would have signed Verlander and, probably made a handful of other moves. And he still gave Neris his deal, Montero his deal, signed Abreu for, above market value, what he probably would have commanded this past offseason. But there comes a certain point where, and I'm really trying to get this across to where, everybody understands it, but I don't care if Abreu's making $19.5 million. If you need to go sign a guy that's making $15 million that is gettable, that can play first base and, that can bat cleanup or, in the 5 spot in this lineup this year for Abreu, steal those at-bats away from him. Do it. Because you have to consider the amount of production that you're getting for other guys on the cheap. I just mentioned, a number of them, McCormick and Myers and Julks, France and Belak. Every year it seems like the Astros get dudes that aren't supposed to, that aren't on the map, to show up and pitch their butts off or play their butts off. And I just call that, the risk of doing business. Well, we've all seen, at this point in time, the risky business that the Astros and Jeff Bagwell and Jim Crane involved themselves in this offseason with, the Abreu signing. You can fix it. It's going to cost you, but you can fix that mistake by making a good decision, ahead of the trade deadline. And I have to believe that the Astros, are going to be married to Dana Brown for quite some time, at least over the course of the next couple of 3 years, unless something egregious is done or negligible is done. I think they're going to give Dana Brown every opportunity to fix this thing.
Well, you just alluded to it, Sean, and I was going to say, let's not forget, Dana Brown was not the one who signed Jose Abreu.
Right.
So you can't pin that on him.
No.
These other guys, that you mentioned, they've been around for a few years, but, it's still early in the game, and Dana Brown can still make some moves that, could help this club. But we cannot pin the Jose Abreu thing on him because he wasn't here when that signing took place.
No, but by the same token, I don't want to pin it all on Jeff Bagwell either. I don't want to pin. I think there's fault of Bagwell, but really Crane as well. I mean, he's the guy calling the shots.
Yeah,
he's the guy he's the one that wanted Jeff Bagwell to be the face, the voice of the front office this offseason. There's a reason why he sent Bagwell over to consummate that deal with Abreu. Doesn't mean he put the whole darn thing together. The guy at the top's got to sign off on it. But, both are culpable in making that decision. And it just so happened that in, one of the, clearer path off seasons for a team coming off of winning a World Series like the Astros did, you might have made a really large mistake that cost you this season. You still have an opportunity to correct, that move this season. Now, in terms of dealing with the future monies, it's the cost of doing business. Money's money, and none of it is ours. And Jim Crane's got plenty of it, and it's a non-cap sport. So they can still right this ship. It's just all about getting the right guy in the right situation, but to produce.
Yeah, let me ask Stephen about this because this is something I don't know if many Astros fans have thought about, but Hunter Brown, this is his first full major league season. And he went last year into November. Now, I get it. He didn't pitch a lot, but there was stressful innings when he did get a chance to pitch in the postseason. He went longer and had to, be more on top of his game than he's ever had to in any time in his life, from the beginning of April last year until November. Do you, Stephen, think about shutting Hunter Brown down for 2 or 3 weeks or, somewhere later in this July or August? Because if you are a postseason team, Hunter Brown's going to go into October again, and he's a young guy, and you don't want to screw with a great young arm like his.
Well, that is an interesting point, and it's something that they may have to look at, especially, he hasn't exactly been lights out in his last couple of starts, and I think that could be one reason, especially if the Astros did get another starting pitcher in the trade deadline. That's something that you certainly could think about, provided, of course, that you don't have any more go down with injuries the way things have been going. If you could get Urquidy back and if he could be effective, that would help. But that might be something that you might have to think about. I certainly don't believe they're going to do it now. But if you get into, let's say, August, perhaps, yeah, it might be something that you look at. Because, in AAA, they do the back-to-back starter thing where you might go 4, 5 innings, and then another guy might go 4 or 5 innings. They do that a lot in Sugar Land. So, yeah, Hunter Brown hasn't done the 6, 7, 8 inning thing the way it's done in the major league level. So it is something that I think that's a great point, Robert. It's something that they may have to take a look at in the next few weeks, especially if Hunter starts to really struggle. Like he just hasn't been quite lights out lately.
Let me make a point on that real quick. Just looking at the numbers for Hunter Brown last year in the minor leagues, he pitched 106 innings. For the Astros, he pitched 20.1 in the regular season. It's 126 innings. The year prior to that, when he stayed in the minors the entire year, he pitched 100 and a third innings. So assuming that now at the age of 24, he's going to see another steady increase in workload in terms of innings pitched, right, this season. You go from 100 to 126 and a third. Maybe he's on pace for about 145, let's just call it, this season. Well, with 95 ball games left in the regular season for the Astros, looks like they're going to kind of maybe go with a 6-man rotation, but who knows for how long. Even if it's 5, somewhere between there, the guy's going to get between 16 and 19 more outings. Let's just call it 17. If he pitches an average of 5 innings, in all of those starts, that's right there at that 140 inning threshold.
Yeah.
When you make the playoffs, you pitch extra by, default. You made the playoffs. And the Astros, while they could have used him, and we probably even talked about this guy being an integral part of the Astros, whether it be as a starter last year or even out of the pen to pitch in the postseason, they didn't do that a whole lot. He came out of the pen, once or twice last year in the postseason for him? Well, you're 24 years old. You've got some experience. You sat and watched a lot. You even helped a little bit. He's going to be asked to do a little bit more because more is expected of him. And I don't think we're at the point yet where we should start freaking out about his workload, because it's not like he's going from 100 innings pitched last year to an expected 160. It's going to be what it looks like to be a pretty steady incline. And anytime you make the postseason, more is going to be asked of you. But let's not forget, and Lance McCullers, in my mind, and it seems like both of you guys or anybody else, doesn't exist right now, nor should he. And hey, God hopes, we all hope he gets healthy, but Astros are doing pretty damn good right now without him. And maybe you explore an option to where, hey, Hunter Brown towards the end of the regular season, if you've got a wild card locked up, if you got the division cinched up, he misses a couple of starts and you save him for the postseason, and you look at somebody that you called up in September to give you some innings. So I think we maybe need to continue to monitor, but I'm not overly concerned by any stretch about his work.
You just roundabout said what I said right off the top, which is basically like, you might want to rest him later. I don't think you rest him in September because you want to get him, back into a groove in September going into October.
Right.
And
the 6-man rotation will help now too. So,
and let's not forget the Astros where they are right now. It's an issue that you might have to be worried about just making the playoffs, because the Rangers, we've said it, they're no joke. And I just think a lot of people, that are fans of baseball think, oh, these managers, they don't mean a whole lot, for games or whatever. Well, this guy that the Rangers have as manager this year, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's a winner in the World Series. I mean,
and they didn't have a manager that I don't think was as good as Bruce Bochy the last few years. And he seems to mean W's. And we ignore, we think, well, in the NFL, the difference between David Culley and Bill Belichick, it's a big deal. But in baseball, we're just like, well, you can get a monkey to manage these guys, and they're a super talent. And I get it, the Rangers have added talent, but it's not that. It's not all that.
Ask Buck Showalter about getting a monkey or, geeky stat nerds to manage a ball club. He doesn't even write his own lineups anymore, and it seems like he's about fed up with that. So I agree with you. I mean, but let's not forget, the Rangers have also spent some money and, got some better players, and they're getting better production. But Bochy's a freaking legend. I'm a little pissed off that geezer still knows what, side is up and down. I was hoping for more of a Tony La Russa type year.
Well, they spent money on Jacob deGrom, and guess what? He hasn't made much of a difference.
Yeah, he's out.
You're right. Now. You're right, but they're getting contributions from all over the place. I mean, the Rangers are for real. There's no question about that. For them to significantly experience a drop off, we're talking like multiple players need to have issues, go down, injuries, just stop producing. And look, it's possible, but we talked about this. I think all three of us prior to the season, just how lucky the Astros got last year with the lack of injury. I mean, it was next to nothing.
Right.
And the pitching was so good that you could stand Verlander to be out for a little bit, and you wouldn't sniff at it. You could stand, a guy in the lineup to be out for a little bit or go through a struggle. And we've seen it. Tucker went through struggles last year. Bregman went through struggles last year. Maybe nothing like he experienced this season, but it happens. There's an ebb and flow. The ebb or the flow, whichever one is the bad one, it's coming for the Rangers. The question is are the Astros going to have their stuff together to where they can start eating into, that deficit atop the division? And right now, I feel pretty fortunate for them that it's just 4.5 coming into the play tonight.
Stephen, I want to give you one last word, anything that we didn't talk about on the Astros. And before you say anything, I'll just, send my apology letter. I'm going to sign it real quickly to Jake Myers and Mauricio Dubon. I'm sorry for not trusting you guys. You guys are way better than I ever thought you would be this year.
Well, you know what? I was not on the Mauricio Dubon, gravy train at the beginning of the season either, Robert. So I'll sign that letter too. Now, Jake Myers, I did pick Jake Myers to be the surprise of the year, and it didn't look like at the beginning that it was going to be right, and there's still a long way to go. But man, he certainly looks like the Jake Myers that we saw a couple of years ago, albeit a smaller sample size until he hit the wall in that playoff series. But oh gosh, Jake Myers, talk about a mechanical thing. It was for sure, because the hitting coaches got with him. He got that leg kick, and man, he hasn't been the same hitter since. So whatever it is, Jake, keep it up, because you certainly need his bat in the lineup. You need Corey Julks to keep hitting, Chas McCormick to keep doing his thing, Yainer Diaz. These are guys that, they're young and they're still trying to figure it out. But you can see that they are good hitters if they can just get, a consistent playing time and just a consistent feel for things. Then, guys like Jake Myers and the rest of them, it's going to really help this Astros lineup a lot.
Hey, do y'all have something I can sign that says I told you so?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll sign it at the bottom. P.S. I told you so.
Hey, you're right. So it's a long season still, 95 ball games. But I think we should definitely be pleasantly surprised, not just about those two, but again, other dudes that they're having to rely upon right now that are producing. Corey Julks, Cougs, go Cougs, baby. One of them, JP France, Brandon Belak. I'm still hoping and holding out hope that my man Ryan Stanek figures it out and brings that 5.51 ERA down to maybe a 2.15 range by season's end. And we'll see, because I tell you what, if he's able to do that, if he's able to turn it around and Montero's able to put it together, then my goodness, this pitching staff and bullpen look absolutely amazing. Just fix the hitting situation and I'll be happy.
Yeah, and you talk about Corey Julks, and he's been really good, but I still want to see him get some more walks. His on-base percentage is terrible. Right. And I'm gonna just throw something out there, just a little bit of observation on Drew Gilbert, who he's a Double-A right now, first-round pick for the Astros last year. He's not burning up Double-A, but what he's done in Single-A and Double-A this year in both leagues, getting on base, it's a big deal. In Corpus right now, he's hit at 229, but his on base is 366. And that more than anything tells you if a guy could be an elite hitter, because it's really hard to be an elite hitter if you're not recognizing balls and strikes, and not just knowing the strike zone, but also, what Alex Bregman does so well, Stephen and Sean. When you watch Alex Bregman, that guy knows when it's a breaking pitch and it's not a breaking pitch. And okay, that's a breaking pitch that's going to dive out. It's not just a breaking pitch, but it's one that it looks like it's going to dive out of the zone. And I think that's what makes him special as a hitter. And Yordan Alvarez, You see that with him. You see it with Kyle Tucker. So just keep an eye out for this kid
Yeah.
because I think
Yeah.
he's going to be special. I really do.
Well, you are absolutely right. And he's also playing some pretty darn good center field. I mean, he could very well be the Astros center fielder of the future, as crazy as that sounds, when you've already got kind of a logjam with McCormick and Myers and, but Drew Gilbert, there's some who have wondered if he might even get to be a September call-up. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but I mean, this is a kid that obviously has great work ethic, because don't forget, he had that major injury last year where he was just starting out in A-ball and he got injured, and he's already back this year. It's a pretty major injury. And he, did great in single A. And then, like you said, he's struggled a little bit at Corpus Christi, but the on-base percentage is something to keep an eye on. But yeah, this is a guy that is a name, kind of like the Christian Javier of the past, somebody like Drew Gilbert. It's a name that you definitely need to pay attention to, because you're going to hear it again and again.
He definitely feels like he's going to be special. Looks like he's going to be special. And my mind is running wild, man, thinking about the future. If you had Gilbert in center, Tucker locked up in right field, if you brought back Bregman and Altuve on extensions, you got Pena locked up for a while, Yainer Diaz at catcher. Figure this first base situation out, and maybe Jokes is your everyday left fielder for the foreseeable future. And my goodness, this is going to be a fun ball club for a long time. There's not that many holes, presumably, that they're going to have to worry about filling. It's just going to take some execution and, maybe tough decisions in terms of some guys, like Altuve's not going anywhere, but, Tucker and Bregman extensions, who knows? We'll see what happens. But it's exciting to think about. It's going to be a lot of fun when we get to that point. But I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit, man. 95 ball games left in this season. Let's do it. Maybe Gilbert, goes on a tear and we get a chance to get him a cup of coffee at the end of the season. I want to see it.
Works for me.
If the Astros feel like they have to go after a pitcher, I look at him as just untouchable. I would not spend money. I would not spend an asset like him on a starting pitcher. Even if you think you're getting an ace, it's going to be a rental. It's going to be a guy typically it's a year or two, unless you feel like you could get somebody that's got 4 years left or something like that.
Right.
And that guy's like one of those golden number one arms. Other than that, he's an untouchable in any trade situation.
Well, look how many times that other teams wanted Kyle Tucker and Forrest Whitley.
Yep.
And the Astros refused to give either one of them up. Now, we can say Forrest Whitley at this point has not panned out. Kyle Tucker certainly has. But remember, those two guys were untouchable. There was no way they were giving them up, not even for Justin Verlander, not even for Zach Greinke, none of those guys. So it is not far-fetched to think that they could get another good pitcher, even a 2 or 3 guy for less than Drew Gilbert. Here's
the thing, though. You got an outsider, man, as GM now, somebody that we really don't know how they operate. And we're going to see just exactly what the word aggressive means to Dana Brown in terms of talking it and walking it. So, but I agree with you. I was actually just going to say that, like, how many guys over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, let's just say, in this farm system have the Astros deemed quote unquote untouchable? I mean, I imagine at one point the guy that just made it back to the bigs and Jonathan Singleton was one of those dudes. Forrest Whitley was one. Kyle Tucker was one. Maybe Hunter Brown was, regarded and talked about in that respect over the course of the last couple of 3 seasons. But the point is, there ain't been many. And the ones that, were absolutely hands off, hey, man, 50% success rate, maybe 67% success rate if you count Hunter Brown and Kyle Tucker against a Forrest Whitley. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, man. I like it. But I'm with you. Hands off Garrett Gilbert, man. Don't even look at this dude right now. I got some choice words if I'm Dana Brown and the Astros for anybody that inquires about this dude. Don't even send me an email.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in the junk folder, bro.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see Drew Gilbert with the Astros, and just love getting to catch up with you, Stephen. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and I'm not laughing at anybody's jokes outwardly because my jaw's stuck, but just let everybody know I can't smile and laugh, but I'm having a great time talking to you guys, and thanks a lot.
Hey, at
You
least
bet.
hit us up with like an emoji or something. Like, give us the LOL. Like, maybe hold up a sign.
Yep. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Keep fighting, Robert. You're a fighter, man. So keep
Yes,
on
sir.
fighting.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. We'll catch you. Me and Stephen. We'll catch up with him later. And Shaun, let's do it again on Monday.
Yes, sir. I'm here for it. Go
Sounds
Cougs.
good, buddy.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.